Okay. Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Zackary Price, and he was 12 years old when he had his near-death experience. Hi, Zackary.
Hello, Peggy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming. I'm anxious to hear
hmm
your story.
Okay, well, it's quite different than any of the other ones I've ever heard. But I think it was tailored, like you said before the podcast, tailored to me. And and yeah, well, we'll start from the beginning. But before I get into that, I want to make clear that there are literally no words that I can use to accurately describe my NDE. It has taken me about 26 years for both all the memories to resurface from that morning, and for me to finally acquire the adequate language to at least point to what I experienced, because there aren't finite words to accurately describe an infinite experience. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Well, it was February 12th of 1998. Um, I was in the sixth grade, and my little sister, who's 2 years younger than me, she was in the fourth grade. And my mom was taking both of us to school, and we were running late. Now, this was on February 12th. And so, Valentine's Day is right around there. And my sister, she was in the fourth grade. So, like elementary schoolers, they'll have these Valentine's Day parties, and they'll all
Boxes.
buy these the boxes, and
Yes.
they'll buy all the cards, and they'll write all their friends' names in the cards, or everyone in the class is a card, and they'll hand out all the cards. Do you remember
Uh-huh.
that?
Yeah.
Well, that's what she was doing. That's what she was doing, and she had filled out the cards the night before, and after we were running late. But she automatically said, "Oh, I forgot all my cards. I got to get them so I can take them to school." So, and like I said, we were speeding. Mom was speeding, and I remembered that I had also forgotten my homework at the house as well. And so as she was turning the car around, she lost control of the car, and then I remember everything going black. As I said before we started, there are literally no words to describe what I experienced, but I can point to it. Uh, First of all, um, what I experienced was not linear, and there wasn't time, meaning there wasn't a past and there wasn't a future. There was only now. It was only happening now. I wasn't aware of anything else. Everything was happening at once. Um, there it was a beauty unlike anything I've ever experienced before in my life. There was a love unlike anything I've ever experienced before in my life. It was a love beyond words. Um, and it was, in terms of the beauty, it was, and the love, it was more than just beauty. It was the purest form that beauty is. It's the purest form of what beauty is. And it was the purest form of what love is.
Did you see something that made you feel this is beauty, or was this a feeling?
Like I said, there was no object there. There was no separation. There was no difference. Like I said, there wasn't an object to be beautiful. It was the purest form of what it was the quintessence of beauty. It was the quintessence of love. And that's the only kind of words that I can really put together to describe what it was. Because I said you can't really describe it, but it was the purest form of beauty and love. And as I said, there was no difference there. It was paradox. Yes, of course there was an awareness that I was there, but I was not different from anything that was happening. There was no difference. There was no separation. There was no difference between subject and object. There was There's no difference between object and verb. Um, Also, there was a knowing unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was like there was nothing that was not known, and everything was okay. Um, but the point was that there was no difference.
Was
Um,
you like aware in the car and then all of a sudden you
all
were
of a
in
sudden, it was black. It was black,
black?
and then I became aware of being a part of everything, and everything being a part of me, and then I was in this place of this indescribable beauty. Um, so, like I said, it's ineffable. Can't put it into words. Um, but since I have recovered from, I came out of the car accident. Since then, I've come to understand that what I experienced was what is referred to in all the great religious traditions as um, I am that I am that I am. Like it's talked about in all the great religions, right? In There's a story in Judaism and Christianity and Islam, the story of Moses, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Moses, he goes to Mount Sinai, loses the sheep, he's trying to find the sheep, and he encounters a burning bush that isn't consumed by the fire. And the bush tells him, ultimately, just go set your people free, go set the Jews free, let them go out of Egypt, find a way to get them out. And he says, well, I'll do that, sure, yeah, but who do I say sent me? And the bush says, I am that I am. And it was God in this story speaking to Moses through this bush. And it's interesting to me, and I've shared this many times, that every person, no matter who you meet, no matter what name you have, no matter what you believe, no matter where you're from, no matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter anything. Every person on the planet def- identifies themselves as I am. In fact, I've said this before too, but we say the name of God before we say our own name. So there is this one universal presence, right? That is looking out through all of our eyes. There's this one I am, right? It's like the largest organism on the planet. There are a couple of organisms that work this way, and there are two very large ones in the U.S. Um, it's a grove of aspen trees in Colorado, and then there's also a whole bunch of mushrooms, like a fungus. I think it's in California. It operates the same way, but we'll focus on the aspen forest. But the aspen forest, they did some studies on this forest. Well, if you walk around in the forest, you see, oh, there's a tree, there's a tree, there's a tree. Oh, these are separate trees, different trees. But they did some studies on this forest, and as it turns out, all of these different trees, if you dig down into the roots, dig down into the ground, to the root system, you discover that not only are they connected, but it's actually only one root system. It's only one tree. There's
Right.
one being expressing itself in millions of different ways. I don't know how many trees there are of different ways at one time. And that's kind of what we are. That was one of the things I brought back. Um, that we are individual expressions of the I am. Different like if light shines through a prism, you have all these different colors that come out, but it's one light, right? Um, Another analogy I like to use is the waves in the ocean. Um, so you have an ocean, a vast ocean, right? And one day, a wave arises on this ocean, and the wave, rises on the ocean, it travels across the ocean, and then one day it crashes on the shore, and it is no more. The wave is gone. But the wave is entirely water. The ocean is entirely water. The wave only existed because of the presence of the ocean. It was the ocean expressing itself as the wave. Um, and yeah,
Now,
so that's the
go ahead.
yeah.
So you were in
That's
a
basic.
coma.
That's the foundation of what I. That's sorry. That's the foundation of what I came back understanding. It just took me almost 30 years to finally find a way to put it into language.
What were your injuries because of the accident?
I had a lacerated liver, a lacerated colon, a bilateral pneumothorax, which means both of my lungs collapsed. I had a fractured L2 vertebrae, and I was in a coma for a month. And while I was in the coma, they put me in the CT scanner, and I died. And I died actually pretty early on. I think like shortly after they got me to the hospital and they put me in the CT scanner. That's what happened. That's when it happened. And they brought me back with CPR. And yeah,
And did you remember this right after when you started coming awake after your coma?
yeah. I remembered. I couldn't put it into words. Like I said, it's taking me this long to finally be able to articulate it. I knew that it had happened. I was like, oh. And I started going to church when I came out of the coma. Like, I finally got home. Like they they told me that if I came out of the coma, like I'd probably be a vegetative state. Like, it was a 20% chance that I would do anything. I mean, even survive, and a very high chance that I would be disabled for the rest of my life. And so I started going to church after I got home. And like I said, nobody in my church, no, my family had ever gone to church. I was the first one to ever do it. But I was trying to figure out what I wanted someone to tell me what had happened to me. Um, someone to give a language or an explanation to what I had gone through. And I heard all this dogma, and you got to believe this. If you do this, you'll be okay. If you don't do this, you'll go to hell. Um, it was a bunch of religious fundamentalism, and I even at that age, I was like, this isn't right. This isn't explaining what I. It's more than this. And so, yeah, it took me a long time to be able to um, experience. But yeah, I think I remembered what had happened also right before the accident after I woke up, but then it faded. I forgot it. I remembered what I experienced when I died, but what had happened right before the accident, I'd forgotten for years until over this 23-year period, eventually, gradually the memories have been kind of trickling back. So
And
that's where I am now.
you become a minister?
Yes, this past summer, I was ordained with the CSA, the Center for Spiritual Awareness. It's in North Georgia, and it is a non-denominational, non-sectarian sanctuary for people of all backgrounds who are looking for a deeper relationship with God. I mean, who don't really, who aren't, who don't align or are kind of turned off by traditional approaches to religion, because we don't. There's no worship that goes on there. It's just remembering the essence of who you are.
Okay. And are you going through a graduate program right now in
I
theology?
am. Yes. Yes. I'm finishing my master's degree in theology. I am going. I'm just finishing my thesis at the moment, and I'll be finishing it up in about a month and a half, and then I will be a clinical chaplain with a master's degree. Um, and yeah, yeah.
Aren't you
And
currently
one
a
part,
hospital chaplain?
yes, that's what I was working with hospice, and I'll probably go back to doing that,
Excuse me.
but had to take a break because I'm working on my graduate degree. Um,
Oh, a hospice chaplain.
Hospice, yeah, yeah. So I typically work with people who are dying, who or very very sick, and their families. And what I do is I talk to them about their belief system, whatever it may be, whether they be Christian or Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim or atheist or agnostic, and I take that model of belief and I use that framework to help them to navigate through their experience of suffering and to establish a life enhancing meaning on the other side of that journey. Now, that may be that they die in peace, which is the goal, and with acceptance, or it means that they have grown in some way from this experience and are going back to their lives. And then I also help the families of the patients that I work with, and I help them to find a new equilibrium after the loss of their loved one. Because when people die, we're close to, it's like losing a part of ourselves. It literally is. We are losing a part of ourselves. And yeah, but I part of my work is is to teach that death is not the opposite. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. Life is eternal. And I know that because I experienced it. And just like the way that the ocean will always exist, there's always the water, right? Waves will come and go, but there's always the water. And
Are they sharing their
yeah,
experiences with you, or
yeah, they all do. Yeah, yeah. And that's it's a very personal profession and line of work that I do. It's very rewarding. I never go home any day, or when I go back to it, I will have never gone home any day thinking, "Huh, I don't feel like I really made a difference today." So it's meaningful work. Yeah.
and those professions like that, like I was in social work, counseling. It's hard. It's jobs that you put your heart in. Not every job do you go, I'm gonna put your whole heart in
Hmm.
and be there present with compassion, even when you're feeling your worst day. You got to find that
Yeah.
compassion somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's and if you don't work with compassion and if you don't work with presence, then you're not really doing your job because that
Right.
is the job. Hmm. And but um, my master's thesis, I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but my master's thesis is on the Lord's Prayer in the original Aramaic, uh, which is very different from what we know today. If you translate it directly into English, it's very different. In fact, most of the translations that we have today um, are about 3 to 5 degrees removed from the original language. Right? And so what happens to languages or words if you translate them through different languages that some of them aren't even related? What happens to them? To the word? What happens to the word if it's translated through different languages? Well, it changes. Like
It
it no
changes the
language,
meaning.
no. It changes the meaning. Yeah, it changes the meaning. And so, well, not necessarily words, but phrases and things that are communicated. And so I'll share a little bit of this with you, and then we can get back to my near death experience
Okay.
and everything. What I gathered from it and brought back with me. Um, so the woman who adopted me after my car accident was my grandmother, and she was diagnosed with
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
nasopharyngeal
sorry.
cancer.
Was your mom killed in the
No,
accident?
no, no, she wasn't
Oh,
killed. My mom was not killed. In fact, I was the only one who was really hurt in the accident.
oh, okay.
So I think my mom maybe got some bruises, and sister had tooth knocked out or something, but everyone was
Oh,
fine, really, except for me.
okay.
But I wouldn't be here talking to you about this if it hadn't happened. So that's a good thing. Um, so
Your
yeah,
grandmother adopted you.
my grandmother adopted me after the accident, and she saved my life. She's part of the reason, largely the reason that I was able to survive because of what she was a nurse, so she
Okay.
devoted everything to me, and like she came and stayed with me in the hospital. I was in the hospital for about 3 months, and yeah, but um, so in 2011, she was diagnosed with nasopharyngeal cancer, and I was living in Vermont at the time. And when I caught wind of this, I immediately dropped everything I was doing and I moved home to be a live-in caregiver for her until she passed away. And when I got there, she was in bad shape. She couldn't even stand up on her. She could go to the bathroom on her own. She couldn't do anything on her own. Sorry. I literally had to pick her up, take her to the bathroom, help her pull, everything, pull down her pants and and it was very difficult when I first got there. But she eventually, she got better and she lived for another 5 years. You
Oh,
know, so after I moved in with her and was looking after her, and but after one particularly difficult day, um, and I always stayed across the hall from her. So if she needed anything during the night, I could get up and go help her with it. Like if she needed to get to the bathroom or something, I was able to get up and go help her. But after one particularly difficult day, um, and oh, by the way, I used to hardly ever remember my dreams. I'm actually starting to remember them more now, but I used to never remember them. And I fell asleep across the hall in my room, and um, I remember I had this dream. It was one of the most vivid dreams I ever remember having. I remember that I was standing in an open field and under in the middle of the night in the nighttime sky. And have you ever seen one of those pictures of that have come from either the James Webb Telescope or the Hubble telescope that was retired? But the pictures that'll come, and there'll just be so many stars
yeah.
in the picture. It just looks crazy. It looks unreal.
Hmm.
Well, that's what it was like. It looked in, but that wasn't what was unique about it. What was unique about it was the stars were blinking. It was almost like it was Morse code or something. And and I was like, this is amazing. And then right before I woke up, I heard a voice. I it it seemed like it was in my ear, and I think it actually woke me up. That's what it sounded like to me. And the voice said the word aboon, Abwoon. And I woke up wide awake. I was wide awake, and I thought someone was there, but I was wide awake, and so I was like, "What was that?" And so I had my computer on my bedside table, and so I put it in my lap and I opened it, and I typed in the word aboon. I searched to see what it meant, and it took me to a website called the Aboon Network. And as it turns out, aboon is the first word in the Aramaic version of the Lord's Prayer. Um, and so I took it upon myself to learn the prayer in Aramaic. And that is what my master's thesis is on.
Okay.
And if you were to listen to that prayer being spoken by Jesus to his disciples, if he were teaching it to them, what you would have actually heard would be this: Abundaboshmaya Neskadashmak Tete Malkuchak Nehwe Sefyanak, Aikana de Bushmaya, Barahak, Havlanak Masunkanam, Yemana, Washpoklan, Chalbain, Waktehain, Aikana Dafkanan Spokan Chayabain, Wela Telan Letuna, Elan Patsan Mimbisha, Mitol Telaki Makutha, Wahali Watishbukta Lalam Almin, Amen. So those are the words you would have heard. I know you didn't understand any of that, but I mean, I think there's only one community who still speaks that language. It's dying. I mean, it's dead, but there's still like I think one community and maybe several people over the planet. But if you were to take what I just spoke for you, actually, before I go any further, are you familiar with the Lord's Prayer?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Would you mind reciting the first part of it?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
first part.
It's actually continue. Can you do the whole thing? Could you do the whole thing?
Um, I have to start over. Our
Okay,
Father
sure.
who
That's
art
fine.
in
That's fine.
heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And lead us not into temptation, but deliver
And
us
lead
from
us not
evil.
into temptation, deliver us from evil.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So that version of the prayer is at the very least 3 to 5 translations removed from what I spoke for you. But if you were to take what I spoke for you and to translate it directly into modern English, in other words, the vernacular that we speak today, it would sound something like this. Because it can't be directly translated because the languages are so different, but it would sound something like this. So the first line that you know is, say it again.
Our Father who art in heaven.
Okay. That's how that version starts out. If you go to the original Aramaic and go to today's English, what it says is something like this: Source of all sustenance and life, carve out a space within our hearts wherein your presence may abide. Breathe into us the life of you so that we are inspired. Increase in us the strength of you so that we may be empowered on our mission. Endow in us the wisdom to produce and share what each of us needs to grow and flourish. Untie the tangled threads of our judgments as we release others from the entanglements of past mistakes. Do not let us digress from our true purpose, but may we be ever aware. You are power, fulfillment, and wholeness itself, as the illusion of our separation is dissolved, and we are made whole once again and for all time. Sealed in trust, truth, and faith, and may this be so. Amen. It's actually what it says.
Hmm.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
And it actually confirms a lot of what I experienced in my car in my death. This as and it doesn't talk about worshiping anyone. It talks about what it means to be alive. You know, um, yeah, yeah. But as that's the case, back to my near death experience, and things that I've gathered from it. There's a word, a Greek word called entelechy, right? And have you ever heard that word before?
No.
Entelechy.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, it's an ancient Greek word, and And to describe what that word is so you could have an acorn and an oak tree. The oak tree is the entelechy of the acorn, right? So the oak tree is the most perfect and realized version of what the acorn is. So it's so yeah. So entelechy is like, and we each have an entelechy. We each have a most perfect final version of what we are. And this is my understanding of what life is. Life is the process of this entelechy of us. Is my entelechy becoming, realizing, like to see with your real eyes, right? To finally see with your real eyes, realize. I think that's a funny play on words. Um, um, and so, yeah, life is a process of becoming who we are, right? So, who and what we are, the most final, perfect version of what and who we are already exists. It already exists in eternity. It is only by going through the process of our life, of the life process and maturing, that we realize that version of us. We bring it into actualization. And yeah, there's another word that I use a lot with my patients and also in my research called alembic. And that is an English word, as far as I know, Alembic. And an alembic is, it's like a purifying vessel, right? So it typically an alembic is something that purifies alcohol. So it brings out the best in it, right? It makes it the best version that it can be. That's what an alembic does, right? So our life, for me, is my understanding is our alembic, right? It's our alembic by which our entelechy, or the most perfect version of ourselves, can be realized. It's us wiping the dust off the mirror so that we can finally see our reflection for what it really is, and its purity and beautiful. And yeah, so yeah, that's what I have for now.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing with us. I realize you're still processing your NDE and memories are coming back slowly and
Well, I think I've actually processed what it was. I think I got what it was supposed to be,
okay.
and it was that it wasn't a journey, because I don't think that was important. I think it's how I grew from it that brought me here. And yeah, I mean, life, and also another thing that I've realized is we think of love as something that we, I guess, as I said, that reality that I experienced in my NDE, it was a love unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. And like I said, it can't be put into words. It's not. I didn't go on a journey. It was just like this is all like it's all happening at one time. And um, yeah, it's like I said, our life is the process of becoming who and what we are. It's revealing. It's like there's another story that I've used a lot. Do you know the story about Michelangelo's David?
Go ahead. Tell me.
Have you ever heard that story? Have you ever
I'm
heard
not
that
sure.
story
I'm not
before?
sure. I'm not sure what you're saying, so go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So I just want to use an analogy to kind of explain that this most perfect version that we can become already exists. So the story of David is that Michelangelo was working on David one day, on carving the statue, and a guy walked by and he said, "How do you make things? How do you make things that are so beautiful? How do you manage that?" And Michelangelo said, meet me today after I get through working at the rock quarry, and I'll explain it to you. So at the end of the day, the guy met him at the rock quarry where Michelangelo got his rocks, and and Michelangelo pointed down into the quarry and said, "You see all those rocks down there? You see that big rock over there?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And he said, "Inside that rock is an angel. My job is to set the angel free." So what Michelangelo was getting at was he was chipping away, getting rid of all the parts of David, referring back to David, that were not David, so that David would be revealed. That's kind of like what our lives are. Our lives are when we go through difficult times, when we struggle. It's the higher version of ourselves, that is closer to God and God Himself, chipping away at the parts of us that aren't supposed to be, right? So that who and what we are can be fully revealed. And yeah, yeah. Do you have any other questions?
I don't think so. I think so. Well, I wish you all the best and on your master's program and your career and sharing your story.
Thank you very much.